I think we do the same thing for us, like as Christians. It could be in church. You just get there and you think, well, we're in church, so that's kind of the point, right? And you could make an idol out of a lot of things, the music in the church or the pastor,
Mm-hmm.
or we kind of talked about this in the last episode, your own faith, right? You start thinking it's your own faith that saves you, so that's what you're actually concerned about. But the whole point all along has been to have a relationship with God.
Yeah, and these are just spiritual disciplines, all those things Caleb mentioned that are supposed to help you keep your heart pure, keep you from envying, things that we talked about last episode. Welcome to Biblocus, where the Bible intersects with your life. I'm Timothy.
And I'm Caleb.
And you're listening to Bible Discussions, the forum where we explore biblical topics that are relevant to your life. Today we are continuing our series on the 30 sayings of the wise from the book of Proverbs. And today we're looking at saying number 15, follow the right path. So let's start by reading that in Proverbs 23, verses 19 through 21.
Listen, my son, and be wise, and set your heart on the right path. Do not join those who drink too much wine or gorge themselves on meat, for drunkards and gluttons become poor, and drowsiness clothes them in rags.
So I'm not really sure this will be a real popular one with our modern American audiences.
You mean the first country to have more people die of overweight than starvation?
Well, I guess that's progress. Anyway.
Of a sort.
Yeah. So, but just like our last few episodes, this one is about path. Like, what long-term path you choose for your life. And it's one of those pieces of literature, this short proverb, where the introduction is vital to understanding its meaning. So it tells you right up front that a wise person considers their path. Mm-hmm. And so that's, I think, the key to understanding this, because it says to set your heart on the right path. And we talked in the last several episodes, we talked about how the heart is the seat of understanding in the Hebrew way of thinking. Mm-hmm. And so it's really saying, like, understand what type of path you're on, right?
Yeah, and so the context of it that it gives is, or the example that it gives is drunkenness and gluttony, but that's within the context of being on the right path.
Yeah. So it's just like one ruinous thing that draws you off the path. So another way is if you were to take this teaching about drunkenness and gluttony here, which we're obviously is what everybody wants to focus on is, it's the bad thing that's in there, but the good thing is it's keeping on the path. Mm-hmm. So if you put this in the context, say, of a marriage relationship, and you said, oh, well, it would be wrong to celebrate your anniversary with a glass of champagne, but that wouldn't be at all what it's saying. Like, if you're celebrating a long marriage on an anniversary, and you're celebrating your commitment to the right path, and you had a glass of champagne together as a husband and wife, that's not at all what this is talking about. It's talking about...
Well, then you're celebrating the fact that you've lived your life on the right path.
Right, yeah, that's right.
Because you got married and started a family.
Yeah, that would be a celebration of the right path. But what this is talking about is a life of constant dissipation, which is a totally different kind of path. Like the whole way of life is devoted to one long party. Every day ends up beginning with a hangover, because every night ends in a food coma and drunkenness.
Yeah,
and so that's the kind of path where a marriage relationship doesn't last.
Yeah, they're not going to have a 50th anniversary.
Yeah. So you have to, you can't just take these things sometimes out of context and then say, oh, anybody who ever drinks alcohol is wrong or something like that, because it's talking about a constant lifestyle there. So whether or not you think it's wrong to drink is kind of irrelevant to what this is teaching.
The main focus there is the path, right? So it goes back to something fundamental from our very first episode, the creation episode, talking about the right path that spirals upward into life and creation.
Yes.
So like the marriage example that you gave, right? You start a family, you have a long marriage, you have children, or like like a good job or career. It's something that builds and spirals upwards.
Yes, yeah. And like investing your time in other people,
Yeah.
you end up with more and more friends. And when you come on trouble, like you have a bunch of people to help you because you've helped a lot of people. And so like all of these things enrich your own life and your family, and usually in some sort of exponential way.
Yeah.
Because like, two people get married, they end up with 6 kids, and then those kids have grandkids, and you end up with, 20 or 30 grandkids or something. It's like this exponential growth from 2
Yeah.
people. So, we've all known families like that, and they're always like a pillar of the community, it seems, because they're mostly made up. The whole community is made up of their family, but they make a big part of the community, and so they make a big difference in the community. So that's a healthy path, and we know from biology, right, that good things grow. Healthy things grow. So a healthy organism does what it's supposed to do, and it grows and multiplies. Whereas the opposite of that is an unhealthy biological thing dies and decays.
Yeah.
And so that's the wrong path, which is the spiral downward.
Right.
And that's what's described with the drunkenness and gluttony.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Solomon says you become poorer. He says drowsiness will make them poor. Dress them in rags.
Yeah, so you
'Cause
become
you get too lazy and tired to take care of yourself.
yeah, and you're even unkempt. It
So
says like your clothing.
If you don't
all
take care of
ragged.
yourself, you're certainly not taking care of a family.
Right.
Yeah.
No, this is something that's decaying and dying, and that's where that leads. That's the unhealthy path. And so the one way to think about it is God's blessed you with a lot of resources, including food and drink, right? And so how are you going to use those resources? Are you going to use them to bless others, or are you going to use them for your own pleasure and purposes? Your own hedonistic purposes.
Right. Or are you going to invest them in pursuing righteousness?
Yeah, the right
being
path.
on the right path.
Yeah,
Putting your children on the right path too.
that's right. So Jesus told us an interesting parable about this. I mean, he told a couple of different parables that you could apply to this, but we're going to read Luke 12, verses 42 through 48, which says, "The Lord answered, 'Who then is the faithful and wise manager whom the master puts in charge of his servants to give them their food allowance at the proper time? It will be good for that servant whom the master finds doing so when he returns. Truly I tell you, he will put him in charge of all his possessions. But suppose the servant says to himself, my master is taking a long time in coming, and he then begins to beat the other servants, both men and women, and to eat and drink and get drunk. The master of that servant will come on a day when he does not expect him, and at an hour he is not aware of. He will cut him to pieces and assign him a place with the unbelievers. The servant who knows the master's will and does not get ready or does not do what the master wants will be beaten with many blows. But the one who does not know and does things deserving punishment will be beaten with a few blows. From everyone who has been given much, much will be demanded, and from the one who has been entrusted with much, much more will be asked.'"
It's kind of like when we studied the prophets. I think it was Ezekiel in particular. God kept calling the watchman. Is that right?
Yeah.
He keeps warning him, like, I'm giving you the word, and you have to tell. Like, he's like, they're not going to listen, okay? But if you just don't tell them because you know they're not going to listen, then their blood is on your hands.
Yeah.
You give them the warning. And then when they don't listen, that's their fault, you know? But you're the one, like, he's the servant. He's the one who knows the will of God. And if he doesn't do it, then he's an unfaithful servant.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like we've talked about on so many different occasions how richly God has blessed us with so many resources, especially in our Genesis episode. And we just talked about so many things he created. You couldn't use them all or even experience in them all in one lifetime. And with all those resources, what are you doing with it? So like he goes away and leaves them in your care. He told us to take care of the whole world, right? That we were supposed to be fruitful and multiply and subdue the world and take care of it. And so the person who has been taking that time to invest in other people and make it increase, to be fruitful and multiply, and to make their mark on the world by, investing those resources back in other people, like that person is the one who sees a huge increase when the master returns. So because he's like, "Whoa, look what you've been doing. That's great.
Yeah.
And I'm going to give you even more." But the person who seizes what he can for his own pleasure, right? That's the person who gets punished in the parable.
Right. And it's a lot like our last episode on envy. We talked about that. Do you want to just are you patient to wait for God's timing for His promises to be fulfilled, or do you just have to seize what you can get now?
Yep. And you can see in Jesus' parable kind of the upward and downward spirals. The person who does the right thing, everything's spiraling up for him, and the person who does the wrong thing, spiraling down.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you can see this is probably one of the most fundamental of all God's promises to us, because at the very first mention of man in the Bible and the very first words to man by God, both talk about this.
Yeah.
So let's look in Genesis 1:26 through 28.
Then God said, "Let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, over the livestock and all the wild animals, and over all the creatures that move along the ground." So God created mankind in His own image. In the image of God He created them. Male and female He created them. God blessed them and said to them, "Be fruitful and increase in number. Fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, and over every living creature that moves along the ground."
So the first thing you see when man's first mentioned there is that we're made in God's image.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think there's any example you could look to for somebody who doing something better with the resources that they have than God. I mean, he creates everything that we need.
He's the one who made all the resources.
Yeah. So he's put them there at our disposal, right? So that we can use them in the best way. And He's already told us, here's the way I want you to use them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an amazing picture, right?
Yeah, and that's where we got the whole spiral concept, was from that episode. Mm-hmm. God goes from nothing. The earth is dark and empty and desolate, and He creates light and life and beauty.
Yeah.
Right, in this upward spiral, and He's continuing to create even now. Right, Jesus says, "I'm making all things new." He's still on that upward spiral.
Yeah, that's right. And then even in that context of God's creative power, His long-term redemptive plan that's spiraling up for all of us, He asks us to be fruitful and multiply in that context. So we're supposed to be a part of that upward spiral. We're part of that growth. We are part of His creation and a growing part of it.
That's human growth.
Yeah.
I mean, He's talking about life. He's talking about offspring. Like I've quoted before, Peter Kraft said, when he said, "Be fruitful and multiply," he didn't mean grow mangoes and invent calculators. He's made us the way in which new human lives come into the world.
Yeah, our first charge from God is to live on an upward spiral. I mean, and His first promise to us is that He's going to help us do that, and that's what our purpose is. Living on this right path
that Solomon tells us to live on.
Yeah. Setting your heart on that is setting it on a path of fruitfulness, right? Of growth, and of using God's resources for the best things we could use them for.
Yeah.
Like Jesus' parable says.
And why would we not follow the right path? What would knock you off of it, right?
Well, there's untold numbers of things, right? They can knock you off. That Jesus gives us a warning. This was in the context of they were asking, his disciples were asking Him, when's the world going to end? When are all these things going to happen? Whatever. And so in Luke 21, verses 34 through 36, He says,
"Be careful, or your hearts will be weighed down with carousing, drunkenness, and the anxieties of life, and that day will close on you suddenly like a trap. For it will come on all those who live on the face of the whole earth. Be always on the watch, and pray that you may be able to escape all that is about to happen, and that you may be able to stand before the Son of Man."
So you see clearly in here that the world is on a spiral downward.
Right.
At some point.
And
it's spiraled up, and now the earth is spiraling down to an end.
Yeah. And the way that you get weighed down to it is with all the carousing and drunkenness, like Solomon was warning about.
Yeah. It talks about it as a trap, but you could think of it as like the water draining out of your bathtub or some kind of whirlpool in the ocean that's like just sucking you down
Yeah.
in, you know.
I think of it just now. I realize there's another connection to Ecclesiastes there, where Solomon says that it's in the houses of the dead where you find joy, and all the like carousing. I don't remember how he words it, but everyone who's partying and drinking, that's where you find death.
Mm.
And it's in the houses of the dead you find life. And I should have had that ready to go, but I just thought of it right now. But it's kind of similar. It's like all this carousing stuff is actually what's killing you. If you live to party,
Yeah.
then that's what's killing you. But I think of there's another Christian podcast called Pints with Aquinas. You can't actually have a pint of beer with Thomas Aquinas because he's been dead for so long. So that's the closest you can get. But the guy who runs that, Matt Fradd, I've heard him talk multiple times about this verse. And Jesus warns you, don't be weighed down by partying and drinking and so on. And he always says, well, wait a minute. I thought we did that because we're feeling weighed down. Like we have the cause and effect reversed in our sinful minds. It's like, oh man, I'm so tired. I need a drink. I'm so upset. I need to smoke or whatever you do to unwind. And it's interesting. It makes me think of Chesterton's got a famous quote about drinking. He says, "Drink because you are happy, but never because you are miserable. Never drink because you need it. That's rational drinking. But drink because you do not need it. That's irrational drinking." And he says that's the healthy kind of drinking. If you drink when you need it, then you're making yourself dependent on it, right?
Yeah.
It's like you're fostering an addiction at that point. And I think that's interesting. Like kind of what you were saying. It's not that you can't celebrate your anniversary. Like when something great has happened, you have a drink or you pass out cigars or whatever, and because it's like it comes from an overflow of joy in that moment, right?
Yeah.
And it's usually you're celebrating something important, like a marriage, like a bachelor's party if you're getting married, or an anniversary if you've been married for a long time, or the birth of a child. And that's when people want to have this natural overflow of joy, and so we don't need it. We're already happy, and that's when Chesterton thinks we should be drinking.
Yeah, I actually, when each of you three boys were born, my dad bought me a box of high dollar cigars, and I passed out cigars to all the male friends I had, or any female that wanted one. But anyway, so I saved the boxes from each one of those. Yeah. You've probably seen them in my office, and I have a picture of each of the boys sitting on top of the box of cigars that I passed out. So I put that in my office to motivate me, say that's keeping me on the upward spiral.
Yeah, I take this advice, and I also think you probably shouldn't do it alone. Like if you're drinking alone, something's wrong. If you're smoking a cigar alone, like what are you doing? Or even like video games, like all the there's so many games where it's like made to just be this immersive experience where you just go in and experience it, and you're not even playing with somebody, like your video game rule for us, right? And that you had to be in the same room with somebody so you could punch them when
playing
they beat you.
Playing head to head. Yeah. Well, if you think about it as gravity, like the gravity of this earth is pulling you down.
Yeah, going back to being weighed down. Yeah,
and you're trying to launch off of this earth
into the upward spiral.
Yeah, into a heavenly spiral. You're trying to escape the gravity of the earth, and so, but its gravitational pull is collapsing you down, and the whole world is collapsing, like the same way that this passage we just read out of Luke.
Well, that's the context of that Luke passage. You miss it if you just pull that verse. It sounds like it's about drunkenness or something, but the whole context of they've been asking Jesus about the end times and end of the age and stuff, and when it'll come, and he's saying, don't let your heart be weighed down. Basically, be ready, because it'll come on all who live on the face of the earth, right?
Yep.
So always be ready.
Yeah, it's crazy because he talks about how it's like springs like a trap, like a mouse trap got you by the neck, and and then it's it's going to come on all, but also he tells you to watch and pray. So there's the spiritual disciplines like we talked about last time. And you don't do those very effectively when you're drinking. I've noticed. So, but at any rate, he talks about being able to escape, right? If you're sober minded and praying, and that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to escape the gravity of corrosion of earth that's pulling you back down. So
yeah, going back to that idea of like the right path, right? And Solomon, he addresses it. He says, my son, stay on the right path. What does that make you think of?
Oh, well, the Shema, right?
Yeah.
Because that's right. Yeah, in the Shema, it said to talk about as you walked along the way, and that's the path.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that here in a minute. But speaking of Deuteronomy in the Shema, trying to escape this collapsing earth, the weight of it made me think of Deuteronomy 4:25 through 31, which says, after you have had children and grandchildren and have lived in the land a long time, right? So here's somebody who's spiraling up.
Yeah.
Right? It seems like, hey, they're really doing it right? If you then become corrupt and make any kind of idol, doing evil in the eyes of the Lord your God and arousing his anger, I call the heavens and the earth as witnesses against you this day that you will quickly perish from the land you are crossing the Jordan to possess. So he's like, okay, you've got the upward spiral, and then there's the downward spiral.
Yeah.
Stay off of that one. All right, so you will not live there long, but will certainly be destroyed. The Lord will scatter you among the peoples, and only a few of you will survive among the nations to which the Lord will drive you. There you will worship man-made gods of wood and stone, which cannot see or hear or eat or smell. But if from there you seek the Lord your God, you will find him if you seek him with all your heart and with all your soul.
There's the Shema again.
Yep.
Yeah.
When you are in distress and all these things have happened to you, then in later days you will return to the Lord your God and obey him. For the Lord your God is a merciful God. He will not abandon or destroy you or forget the covenant with your ancestors, which he confirmed to them by oath.
I think of that as like they get in the land and they think, all right, we're in the promised land now, so we're done,
Yeah, we've arrived.
And then they just slack off, and that was never the point. Like the whole point is ultimately it's right relationship with God. But even for specifically the ancient Israel context, like they're waiting for the Messiah. They're waiting for God to make things right so we can have right relationship with him.
Mm-hmm.
And if they just get in the land and get complacent and just kind of comfortable, I think we do the same thing for us, like as Christians. It could be in church. You just get there and you think, well, we're in church, so that's kind of the point, right? And you could make an idol out of a lot of things, the music in the church or the pastor, or we kind of talked about this in the last episode, your own faith, right? You start thinking it's your own faith that saves you, so that's what you're actually concerned about. But the whole point all along has been to have a relationship with God.
Yeah, and these are just spiritual disciplines, all those things Caleb mentioned that are supposed to help you keep your heart pure, keep you from envying things that we talked about last episode. Well, you see in this Deuteronomy passage how this guy had children and grandchildren, so he had the exponential growth. He was on the upward spiral, and then all of a sudden it starts collapsing by the corruption of the world, like Jesus talked about in Luke. And so gravity starts to pull you back down into the death spiral, that is life on this earth if you don't have God. And so what's the solution, right? Seek God with all your heart and soul, it says. And like we pointed out there while we were reading it, that's the echo of the Shema. But if you didn't notice it in our saying for this episode, right, it also said to set your heart on the right path, which the Shema had said when you walk along the road, right, which is the path. It's the Hebrew word derek. And so that Hebrew word is the same word for path or road or way. And so then that connotation passages like Isaiah 40, verse 3, right? Where both the ministries of John the Baptist and Jesus were intended to restore this path, right? So we read in Isaiah 40, verse 3.
A voice of one calling in the wilderness, prepare the way for the Lord, make straight in the desert a highway for our God.
So we had all left this path, and God called us back to it through John the Baptist, right? And he was calling us back to point us toward Christ, to restore the true path of the true upward spiral, right, of this redemptive history that God's working through like the passages we've seen that we've looked at in Deuteronomy and in Ezekiel and other places in the last couple episodes.
So going back to that question, right, about God gives you resources, so what do you do with them?
Yeah. So it's so easy, to get off course and lose your way, and this drunkenness and this gluttony that was mentioned in our saying is just a couple of ways that can happen. So the last passage we want to read is out of 1 Peter 4, verses 1 through 11, that talks about how you handle these resources. It says, "Therefore, since Christ suffered in his body, arm yourselves also with the same attitude, because whoever suffers in the body is done with sin. As a result, they do not live the rest of their earthly lives for evil human desires, but rather for the will of God. For you have spent enough time in the past doing what pagans choose to do, living in debauchery, lust, drunkenness, orgies, carousing, and detestable idolatry. They are surprised that you do not join them in their reckless, wild living, and they heap abuse on you. But they will have to give account to him who is ready to judge the living and the dead. For this is the reason the gospel was preached even to those who are now dead, so that they might be judged according to the human standards in regard to the body, but live according to God in regard to the spirit. The end of all things is near. Therefore, be alert and of sober mind, so that you may pray. Above all, love each other deeply, because love covers over a multitude of sins. Offer hospitality to one another without grumbling. Each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others, as faithful stewards of God's grace in its various forms. If anyone speaks, they should do so as one who speaks the very words of God. If anyone serves, they should do so with the strength God provides, so that in all things God may be praised through Jesus Christ. To him be the glory and the power forever and ever. Amen."
So again, it's putting it in that context of looking to the end of the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
That Christ is coming to judge the living and the dead.
Yeah, he actually tells you to take anything that God's given you as a resource and use it for good things.
Mm-hmm.
This is what we had been saying that the proverb meant. So, and also we said that's what we're designed to do, right from the very first chapter of the Bible. That we're supposed to take all the resources that God gave us and use them for good and make them spiral up into a fruitfulness, into multiplying through time. So yeah, that's how we conform to God's image. And if you think about it, conforming to God's image is the opposite of idolatry.
Yeah, we've talked about that in our Ten Commandments episode on idols.
That's right.
And Psalm 115, which I really liked, how those who make idols are just like them. They're mute. They can't move. They're blind.
Yeah, but
because it's static. But the living God made us in his image. And
he didn't want idols because he wanted us to represent his image to one another, right? To live up to that high ideal of living up to being made in the image of God. And when we make a fake idol, we're destroying all of that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, so that's the covenant he's made with us. And because when God makes a covenant, he keeps it because he's faithful. Like Caleb talked about, trusting God over the long term. That Christ came to restore that path for us because it was broken. Mm-hmm. And that's why John came and prepared the way for him, and then Christ gives us back the opportunity to walk that path with God. So it's a beautiful thing. Mm-hmm. So don't get lost in all the imagery of the drunkenness and the gluttony and say, oh, this is just a passage about not drinking again. Another one of those.
Yeah.
It's way bigger than that, right? Those are certainly bad things we wouldn't want you to practice, but they're emblematic of this bigger problem of not focusing on the right path.
Yeah. So our wise words takeaway is the path of righteousness leads upward to God.
Yeah, so we'd encourage you to find that upward trajectory to your life and aim up, as a lot of people say. And, you aim high, you miss high. And, but you spiral, you're trying to continuously spiral upward into a better life every day.
Yeah, that's right.
And how can we find that right path in this world?
By listening to God's word.
Yeah, we can listen to God's word. We can read his word. We can join a church, a body of people who are committed to trying to find that right path through life. So we always want to encourage you to do that and pursue God's word. So he's Caleb and I'm Timothy, and thank you for listening to Bible Discussions on Biblocus, where the Bible intersects with your life. Please consider subscribing to our channel to help support our efforts. All scripture quotations, unless otherwise indicated, are taken from the Holy Bible, New International Version, NIV, copyright by Biblica, Inc., used by permission of Zondervan, all rights reserved. This program is copyright 2025 by Timothy Klingerman. God bless all of you.